Hello, everybody. My name is PJ. I'm the VP of Marketing for NuVoodoo Media Services. I'm here along with our EVP of Research, Lee Jacobs. Welcome to today's webinar, Reboot the Commute. We'll be reviewing data from our 18th ratings prospect study conducted in June 2021. Attendees are going to be on mute throughout today's presentation. However, Lee and I will stay on for as long as needed for the Q&A at the conclusion of today's webinar. You can chat in your questions to Jake, our producer, at any point. We want to thank our pals at All Access for making today's event possible. The All Access Audio Summit was virtual this year, so you can experience it all on demand, including panels, keynotes, and entertainment for just $150. You can get your pass now at allaccessaudiosummit.com. Our semi-annual study of better than 3,100 14 to 54-year-olds took place in mid-June, about 5 weeks after the CDC sounded the all clear for those that are vaccinated. But because the Delta variant had dominated the news cycle over the past couple of weeks, and given the recent rise in cases and hospitalizations, we felt it important to supplement our June study. So at the end of the presentation today, we're going to present a bonus mini study that focuses on concern over the Delta variant conducted just last week. We want to make sure that you have the most timely information possible to make informed decisions when planning over the next few months. But first, RPS 18. As we've done with each of our studies over the past decade, we took all respondents through a series of qualification questions to determine which among our sample group is most likely to accept a meter or diary from Nielsen. Approximately 19% of our already research-friendly survey participants screened in as likely ratings prospects, labeled RPS Yes here on your screen. Of course, the most valuable subset of ratings likelies are those among the RPS Yes group who spend about an hour or more every day with AM/FM radio. It's about 7% of the 3,100-ish sample labeled on your screen as RPS 60s. These are the people who make or break station ratings. So Lee's going to be putting a lot of emphasis on those today. Not much change in the underlying reasons for participating in the radio ratings. It's about the money and rewards first and foremost, and being responsible or representative opinion givers second. Both Nielsen and radio emphasize contesting to drive compliance and listening, so it shouldn't be a surprise that qualifying to win cash or a big prize falls a close second behind actual payments as motivation for being a part of the PPM or diary keeping universe. Ratings likelies tend to come from larger households consisting of couples or families with school-age children, which makes sense considering compensation from Nielsen increases with household size. And then one final note before we begin, we're not going to be sharing today's presentation slides, but as an attendee, you're going to get a video copy of today's presentation, which is jam-packed with data. So at this point, let me hand things off to Lee Jacobs and RPS 18.
Thanks very much, PJ. So if you've got time today to absorb nothing else, I'll ask you to pay attention to these 3 points. Number one, respondents predict they're going back to work outside the home. Across the overall sample in the chart on the left, we see an 11-point increase in terms of expecting to be going back to work outside the home by year's end. On the right, the RPS ratings prospects, the RPS Yes ratings likelies, which start higher than the overall sample to begin with and then go up 12 full points in terms of their prediction. So nearly half of those likely to be ratings respondents expect to be back at work this fall as the kids go back to school. That's good for radio and it's good for business as well. Number two, when working outside the home, broadcast radio is stronger compared to DSPs, by which I mean digital streaming providers like Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, Pandora, et al. Shown here as percentages of all those working, either working from home or working out of home. When you add up those listening on a radio in yellow and those listening to radio stations via streaming in green, radio looks a lot stronger when working out of home, where it's a total of 18% compared to the DSP's 15%. And number three, while not as TSL positive as the DSPs or those using YouTube as an audio service, radio is growing as we emerge from the pandemic. More mobility means more time in the car, and that means more radio TSL for many. In yellow, the numbers saying they're listening more to these services. In green, those who say they listen a lot, but the amount hasn't gone up. In light blue, those who say they don't listen very much, but the amount hasn't changed. And in darker blue, the smaller numbers who say they're listening less. The car is the battleground for much of radio's usage in 2021, but in-car infotainment systems are bringing changes in behavior, so let's take a look there. Do you use these devices, a radio in a car, a radio anywhere other than in a car on the right? On the left, 2/3 of the sample says they listen to a radio in a car every week, many more often than that. But on the right, a slim majority say they listen to a radio not in a car less than once a week or not at all. Personally, I find myself in that dark blue range of, yes, I have a radio at home, but I only listen to it, a couple of times a month. There's some special show or something that I want to catch, and I don't feel like trying to, stream the station online. Much of the time, I end up streaming stations when I'm listening at home. Those likely to participate in the ratings, though, the ones we've labeled RPS yes, are more audio and radio attuned, as highlighted in the green boxes. Over 4 in 5 listen weekly in the car, and 7 in 10 listen weekly outside the car. Take a look at weekly usage among the RPS yes ratings likelies by demo. We're showing them broken out in dark gray and pink. Even at the young end, the 14 to 24s, we see 77% listen weekly in the car, and 77% listen weekly in a car, and 65% weekly out of the car. That's a pretty big difference. If I pull back to the wider sample, well, there's a definite skew to radio usage. You'll see less of it in the ratings because we're measured by people who are more media attentive, the RPS yeses that I just showed you. But in the wider world, you'll see that just over half, the 14 to 24s, listen to radio in a car, and just over a third listen anywhere else in a typical week. But changes are coming to the car. 36% of our samples say they listen on a traditional car audio system, just AM, FM, and maybe a CD or cassette player. 39% plurality listen on what we're labeling a cord Bluetooth system, where it's possible to hook up an external audio source, maybe a smartphone, or connect it with Bluetooth, but that's more likely to be something most people would use for a long trip or some other special occasion rather than day in, day out. Finally, 15% in light blue are enjoying a connected car audio system where there are apps to select audio sources. Sometimes it's hard to even find the AM or FM icons. Or they're using a system like Apple CarPlay or Android Auto, where the smartphone becomes your entertainment center. No shock, these connected car audio systems correlate with higher household incomes. So while it's 15% overall, when you get to those with household incomes over 200,000, that 15% jumps to 24%. And connected cars have an impact on overall time spent listening overall in people's lives. If you have a connected car, you're 13 points more likely to spend at least 30 minutes a day listening to DSPs compared to those who have a traditional AM/FM car radio system. 8 points less likely to spend that much time listening to broadcast radio. Even the cord Bluetooth systems hurt radio usage a bit, and they right now are the plurality of car audio systems in our sample. And audio devices are changing at home as well as in the car. We'll start here with smart speakers. We've been tracking them since 2017. They're relatively inexpensive audio devices that pack a big punch in lives. And it's really no surprise they've proliferated even during a pandemic. Now it's 70% among these 14 to 54s across all PPM markets, basically the 48 largest markets in the country. And that's a different number than you'd get if you looked at everybody across the land with no top end and even out into far more smaller markets and rural areas. Concentrated in these top 48 markets among 14 to 54s, we're talking 70% have at least one smart speaker in their lives. And that's up 14 points since just after New Year's in 2020, before the pandemic set in. The RPS yes ratings likelies are even more likely to have smart speakers than the overall sample. I'm showing here the trend back to before the pandemic in January 2020. Now we're showing 83% among that 19% of our sample who profile as RPS yes ratings likelies. What kind of smart speaker do you use most often? Amazon's Echo with its distinctive Alexa interface leads here, but Facebook has entered the fray with its Portal device and seems to have taken some of the momentum from the Google Home devices. And where do they have their devices? If you add up all these placements, you'll end up with 230%, meaning lots of folks have more than one smart speaker in their lives. Top placements, bedroom and living room, opening up the possibility of getting radio back on inside the home. We just showed you that many people either don't have a radio at home or they have it, but they forget to turn it on or it's inconvenient. Letting people wake up to radio morning shows in bedrooms is a new possibility on a smart speaker, or having stations on while they entertain friends at home is another possibility with that smart speaker in the living room. Alexa can do more than just pry in on their private conversations. How much time do smart speaker owners spend with different audio sources? Well, among the smart speaker owners here, 30% have spent at least 30 minutes, a half an hour, listening to an FM station on their device within the past week. 56% among the RPS Yes ratings likelies. And while I'm not showing the trend here, that's up from 25% back in January across the total sample and 51% among the RPS Yes likely ratings group, an increase of 5 points apiece. The steady pressure of stations promoting to listeners that they can listen on their smart speakers is paying off. We're getting more time spent listening. Open it up to look at overall daily listening of at least 30 minutes a day on any device, and we'll see the DSPs, Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Music, Pandora, etc. in yellow, set a stiff headwind now, eking ahead of broadcast radio in green, even among the 35 to 54s, the oldest segment within our sample. And podcasts, shown here in light blue, are becoming a daily fact of life in audio usage as well. Among the RPS Yes ratings likelies, nearly 2 in 3 spend at least 30 minutes a day with broadcast radio, but even more, 71% are connecting with DSPs. Even among the RPS 60s, who use radio at least an hour a day by definition, so it's 100% using AM FM among that group, nearly as many, 92%, spend that kind of time with the DSPs. Changing color coding here because the question has changed. We've asked them to imagine listening to 5 songs in a row using each of these 2 methods, and which one will play the most songs they love. FM radio without changing stations, shown in green here, or digital streaming without skipping songs, shown here in blue. So overall, it's nearly 2 to 1 in favor of DSPs if all we're providing is a music utility. The DSPs win by a factor of about 3 to 2, even among the oldest in our sample, the 35 to 54s. Among the RPS Yes ratings likelies, the 5 songs on FM versus 5 songs on DSP battle gets a little tighter and nearly ties among the small subset who are RPS 60s, who by definition use at least an hour of broadcast radio a day. So not surprising, we are likely to please them. If I break up the RPS Yes ratings likelies by music format P1s, there's one set of P1s, the CHR P1s, where they feel that FM will play more songs in a row for them that they love than DSPs will. Tracking digital and social platforms is something we've become known for, and these channels form the basis for many of the marketing programs that we conduct for client stations. Daily usage of social digital platforms it's at its summertime norm now as we track back here to January 2020 before the pandemic set in. TikTok is the standout, growing strongly here since it appeared on the scene, daily usage now rivaling that of Snapchat and Twitter. So we can track more than these 6. Here's daily social digital usage broken up by broadcast radio TSL. And we can tell you some things don't change. Those who listen to lots of broadcast radio also tend to visit a lot of digital sites. That makes social and digital platforms good for marketing and promoting radio stations. And here's digital and social platforms broken up by narrow demo groups. You'll notice that Facebook, while still strong, has done nothing to plug the usage holes that it has among the young end, the 14 to 24s. Instagram remains strong here despite challengers, Snapchat and TikTok. But neither of those latter 2, Snapchat, TikTok, allow you much precision if you're a local advertiser. So while we don't recommend paid advertising there, you should still optimize all the organic reach your brands can muster on those platforms. At the bottom of our ranker, you'll notice Clubhouse and Parler, both with a pulse among guys 25 to 44, though not really a strong heartbeat for either. If we drill down into these social and digital channels, it's not surprising to see increased daily usage for all of them among the RPS ratings likelies, shown here in dark gray, and of course, many among the RPS 60 subset of heavy listening ratings likely shown in pink. They're checking out lots of digital and social channels each and every day. Here's that daily usage broken out by RPS ratings likelies and then splintered into music format P1 groups, filtered through that RPS lens. I've got breakouts here for CHR, hip hop, country over there toward the right. Had to combine hot AC and AC P1s to have enough respondents. We gave the same treatment to the rock and alt format P1s. And again, all the spoken word formats, news talk, all news talk, NPR, sports, etc. And we're showing the combined RPS P1s for classic rock, classic hits, 80s, variety hits, Jack FMs, all as RPS library. Across all of them, the foundational 4 channels for paid advertising remain strong among ratings likelies, Google, YouTube, and Facebook, Instagram, though our marketing team pays attention to the usage profiles of format P1s and demo groups when choosing the right mix for client stations. And at the risk of burying you in too much data, here's daily usage on the left in green, yellow, red formatting, and then compulsive usage of 3 times a day or more on the right in blue, white, red formatting. Among the TSL heavy ratings likelies, the RPS 60 slice, you'll notice that more than half are compulsively checking in with Google and YouTube and Facebook and Instagram.
Yeah, there's a reason why we call those our foundational 4. When lead time is scarce or budgets are tight, you just got the call from corporate, hey, we're going to give you a couple bucks for this fall. The data confirms once again that this combination offers the single most efficient weapon for ratings impact. When we combine and dedupe for daily use, the potential reach of PPM likelies as well is well into the 90s. And because such a significant percentage of RPS listeners use these channels frequently to chronically every day, your marketing is seen with frequency, so ratings impact with the right messaging can happen fast.
And here's confirmation. Nearly half the RPS ratings likelies say they interacted with a station's social media post in the past week. And that climbs to 2 and 3 among the TSL heavy RPS 60s. And while they're even more likely to interact with stations on social media, as I just showed you, the RPS ratings likelies nearly double the overall sample in terms of likelihood of joining station VIP clubs, and they do double the overall sample in terms of opting in for text alerts. The charge today is getting a first-party data relationship with listeners, and a multi-pronged approach is always best. That first-party data relationship has become critically important in part because of the privacy changes with Apple's recent iOS 14.5 update. That update evolved mobile tracking from opt-out to opt-in only, so it's a topic on a lot of minds today. And while these data are showing the aggregated concept of thousands and thousands of radio stations swimming around in the minds of these 3,000 plus respondents, local radio stations, as a group outlined here in green, are more trusted than Facebook and trusted even more by the RPS ratings likelies. In practice, right now it's an iOS issue, but we guarantee it's going to come to Android. And the point is that ratings likelies, and to an even greater percentage, that critical slice of TSL heavy RPS 60s, say they will allow app tracking often, if not always. And that's critical to establishing first-party data relationships with listeners. What's more, those who listen to FM either over the air or on stream while they work away from home or from home are more tolerant of app tracking as well. That's a plus for your advertisers and for you because of a proportionally greater number of station app listeners that you'll be able to retarget in the future with advertising messages, thanks to the trust radio has been able to develop and maintain with its audience. We're talking about measured media here, so keeping your brand top of mind and at the top of the listener's usage pyramid often means marketing. And while these data say people are going back to workplaces outside their homes, as of this fielding, these data from the latter part of June this year, this says that getting telemarketing calls answered at work won't be the slam dunk that it was pre-pandemic. Right now, a little less than half of those attempts will connect to a soul who might give you the impact and the altered behavior at the workplace that you're hoping to get. While we've shown the big daily usage levels for various social and digital channels, Here we're asking respondents to recall where they notice ads. It's a 6-point scale, and we're showing the top 2 boxes, those saying if they notice ads on these channels either all the time or just one point beneath that. And among the RPS yes ratings likelies, they're more likely to recall ads overall in the population. The digital channels, very efficient at the younger end. Direct mail can be very potent, 25 plus. And OTT TV, while it shows up toward the bottom of the ranking, it's worth a look for a number of reasons.
Yeah, since the pandemic began, we've noticed a huge shift in the amount of video being consumed on TV screens and the amount of long form programming specifically being consumed on any device. So we put together a new metric that we call digital video compulsives. These are people that use YouTube more than 3 times a day or watch over the top video on any device. So tablets, smartphones, connected TVs, set-top boxes like Apple TV, for at least an hour a day. Over the top or OTT, by the way, just an industry buzzword bingo term for the consumption of long form video programming via the internet. When we look at the individual silos for compulsive video use, especially among RPS yes and RPS 60 listeners, we see a huge upside for radio campaigns. Around half of RPS yes and 2/3 of RPS 60s are using YouTube compulsively or watching OTT on a mobile device or connected TV screen for more than an hour a day. And when we combine and dedupe, the potential reach is significant. On the marketing side of the company, data drives all our decisions, which is why we're fortunate to say that the total reach video campaigns that we've been doing over the last 16 months has been one of the most effective weapons for clients.
And here are the numbers showing the results when we do combine and dedupe these digital video viewers. Potent 42% of the sample fall into the group we're calling digital video compulsives, shown here in olive green. Those who use lots of YouTube or OTT over-the-top video content, be it on a small screen or a big screen. You'll see they're most plentiful at the young end, but they still account for nearly 2 in 5 of the 35 to 54s. And we all know how potent TV ads can be for communicating the benefits of radio brands. And here's a pathway to use video efficiently and effectively. And the numbers, as you'd expect for digital video compulsives, climb among the RPS yes ratings likelies, 58% and 73%, almost 3 in 4 of the TSL rich RPS 60 ratings likelies. The compulsives are the big targets here, but almost everyone has some daily exposure to digital video these days, nearly 90% across the total sample and 95% among the RPS yes ratings likelies. These RPS yes digital video compulsives are plentiful among P1 groups for many formats and thus represent a great route for advertising stations. Given the nature of ratings respondents, one of the tactics that continues to punch above its weight is contesting. So we always devote some part of the interview to prizes, contest types, and other contesting issues. Contests impact those you need to connect with to move the ratings, the TSL heavy RPS 60 ratings likelies. Among that group, almost 3 in 5 say they participated in a radio station contest in the past week. Just over 20% of the overall sample, but we can impact those who listen the most and are most likely to impact the station's ratings with contesting. And those last week contest player numbers align with those who are contest actives. Contest players have switched around some during the pandemic, but we still see half the RPS yes ratings likelies who qualify or classify as contest players between those who've always played and still do, shown here in yellow, and the newbies who've started paying attention and playing contests more recently in olive green. Not everyone pays attention to contesting, but you can see how contest players align with the people you need to impact the most. We tested a panel of 9 tactics that you might use to generate listening occasions. As expected, $1,000 prizes up at the top of the ranking, even though we framed it here as a nationwide contest. More about that in a bit. It ties with commercial-free music, always a potent tactic, and both tie with the big dog of reasons to tune in. Scripted here is a National Weather Service storm warning, and remember, this is back in mid-June or late June when there just weren't that many kind of storm events going on around the country. If you get into times where there are bad weather, that gets much higher up on people's ladders and much higher into their radar, if you will. Single point lower, we see the potency of requiring contest actives to register just once and then having chance to win every day. But this is across the entire sample. What if we filter down to the RPS yes ratings likelies? Well, of course, the numbers get a lot bigger. We show a number of tactics delivering 3/4 or more of them: the $1,000 nationwide contest, the concept of registering once and having chances to win every day, commercial-free music, and of course, combining commercial-free music and contest cash with commercial-free cash, that concept. What's the smallest cash prize that would get you to play? We're showing the new data here along with the results from Ratings Prospect Study 17 back in January. And consistent with what we'd seen earlier in the year, $500 prizes connect with about 2 and 3 contest actives. $1,000 prizes draw in more contest active listeners, brings the total up to around 6 and 7. So the budget implication is simple. $500 gives you more possible contest plays for your budget. $1,000 gives you more people paying attention, though you'd have to get the prizes into the multiple thousands of dollars to get attention from more than about 6 and 7. Frequently, the decision is ultimately made by a competitor. $500 is pretty interesting unless the other guys are giving away $1,000. So here I'm isolating the results comparing $500 prize interest with $1,000 prize interest. Among the RPS Yes ratings likelies, $1,000 yields a 16-point lift in contest interest, but you'll need to put $1,000 in the hands of the ratings likely rock and alt P1s aggregated here to get the attention of more than half of them. $500 alone will get you the attention of 71% of the ratings likely country P1s and 61% of the ratings likely CHR P1s. In fact, asked a different way, we see that nearly 2/3 of the RPS Yes ratings likelies agree at least somewhat that they won't even bother with a contest where the prize is under $500. Changing color scheme here because here's confirmation that RPS Yes ratings likelies really do price comparison shop across station contests to be able to get the most cash for their listening time. Just over 1/3 of the overall sample, but accounts for 2 and 3 RPS Yes ratings likelies and nearly 4 and 5 of the RPS 60s. Those people that come into the station lobby to pick up a prize that we've joked about as contest pigs for years also stand a really high chance of being people who are either currently giving you your report card, may have in the past, or may yet in the future. Given a choice of calling in to win or texting to win, texting wins big. More entries means more people altering their behavior in hopes of winning your game. But texting makes it work on your end to get winner audio because they're not calling in breathless hoping to score some contest cash. And we see 38% of the RPS Yes ratings likely strongly agreeing with the idea that most radio station contests are rigged. 47% among the TSL-rich RPS 60s, where 2 and 3 agree at least somewhat about rigged contests. You push back on that idea when you run winner promos regularly so that listeners know people really do win your contest cash. And the people controlling the ratings likelies, and that subset, the TSL-heavy RPS 60s, tell the tale. Many recall having their listening altered by station contests or promotions. Only 15% of the RPS Yes ratings likelies didn't choose any of our prompts. Maybe they're above being bribed, or maybe they're thinking back to a contest that had an even richer prize. I promised more information about group contesting. We've looked at this before. It continues to track, by the way. Overall, 57% aren't aware these national contests are going on at all, shown here in yellow. Among the ratings likelies, however, only 31% are unaware, but the surprise might be that most think group contests are good in olive. In the past, when we've had the time to ask them why they feel that way, the answers are pretty consistently they think the prizes are bigger or there are more chances to win. And while it's true some don't care about this issue at all in light blue, when you boil everything else away, it's a teeny sliver who think group contests are bad, shown here in darker blue. That's just 4% overall in this fielding last month and only 3% among the ratings likelies. And yeah, there's a little teeny 1% among the RPS 60s there. And when there's no contest cash in the kitty, commercial-free music remains a potent lure, as we'd shown earlier, especially among those likely to show up within Nielsen samples, and even more especially among those who listen to a lot of radio. They got big TSL. Of course, they're seeking commercial-free music options, and they're more likely to turn quarter hours in your favor. Last set of points to share here. We know habits have shifted around during the pandemic. Morning radio habits are among those that have changed. If you've been laid off or you've been working from home during the pandemic, you may have fallen out of the morning radio habit. We see 68% of the RPSCS ratings likelies agreeing at least somewhat with the idea that they're out of the habit of listening in the morning. Building back will be a matter of connecting with those listeners as they resume their old patterns and reminding them why they had those habits to begin with. Radio and its morning shows need to bring their A game as people resume their commutes. Even in mid-June, radio is doing a pretty good job connecting emotionally with people, whether it's getting them to laugh out loud, and that's a pretty high bar met for better than half the RPSCS ratings likelies, giving them a smile, or just making them feel better, making them feel good. We know that needs and expectations of music format P1s vary, and the goals are met differently among different format P1 groups. The point is to be prepared to rekindle these emotional relationships, making human connections with listeners in ways that DSPs just can't. If you haven't done so already, this is a great time to chat in any questions you have for us. Our producer Jake is manning the chat, and we'll pass your questions along to me and PJ. As we promised, we'll stay on until every last question is answered. And one more thing, the data we've been sharing were collected in mid-June when the Delta variant was a thing emerging maybe in other parts of the world. Of course, it's here now and business is paying attention. While our June study points to a healthy return to more folks commuting to work, there's reason to imagine the Delta variant could impede the speed of that return. So we wanted to get our arms around concerns about the Delta variant. So just last Tuesday morning, the day before we kicked off this webinar series, I brought the concept up to our company president, Carolyn Gilbert. Less than an hour later, we had a short questionnaire. About 5 hours later, I had data tables with the results of over 1,300 interviews among persons 14 to 64 nationwide, balanced for gender, age, ethnicity, and geographic region. We started with a simple question about vaccination status, and see that while over 60% of this sample of 14 to 64s is at least partially vaccinated, with more planning to get vaccinated, 8% are still waiting for full FDA approval or some other sign in order to feel safe, and 18% are solidly against getting the vaccine. Vaccine resistance is at 12 and 14% in the Northeast and Western US regions, but it's at 22% in the Midwest and 23% in the Southern US, where less than half are fully vaccinated. Changing color scheme here because now we're asking about concern about the Delta variant. 19% have significantly changed activities as a result of concern about Delta, and another 23% are being more careful in response to Delta. In the Northeast and Western regions of the US, at least 45% are at least moderately concerned about Delta and are being more careful in their lives. That number, though, drops to 31% in the Midwest, where 23% say they're not concerned at all. What's fascinating is that it's the unvaccinated portion of the sample where 29% say they're not at all concerned about Delta, and only 26% say they're at least moderately concerned. That's a big contrast with those who are fully or partially vaccinated or plan on getting vaccinated, where just 15% say they're not at all concerned, and nearly half say they're at least moderately concerned and are being more careful in daily activities or have made significant changes already in their lives.
So that Delta variant study was a short study that we turned around in less than a day. Now, while NuVoodoo conducts ongoing music testing and perceptual research for everything from radio clients to ratings prospects, just as you've seen in today's presentation, we've also just announced the launch of a value-added service that you can provide to advertisers or to help you close a deal in the sales department. That way you and they can make the most of radio's expected commute reboot. We call it Consumer Insights. Since we've got access to a far greater portion of the population online than on the phone, we can deliver larger and better quality samples to support your sales efforts. NuVoodoo uses ID verified online sample panels geared for large-scale consumer research. Now, Consumer Insights is customizable, ongoing research geared for specific advertisers, or we can look at entire ad categories. It can be scaled for local markets or regional or even national groups as well. Study data can be delivered daily, weekly, or monthly. In fact, you actually have access to a real-time dashboard, so you can always know the sample size behind each question that you're asking. And study questions can be set up to gather insights across a wide variety of advertiser categories, and in particular, the big ones that buy radio frequently. Now, remember, this is a service that you can provide to your customers to give them insights into their businesses. True value added, and NuVoodoo simply would act as your white labeled back-end provider. But enough from us. Let's hear from you. Jake, what's first up in the Q&A?
Hi, thank you for your questions, everyone. We do have a couple. The first one is OTT still seems so new. Why that over traditional TV if you can only choose one?
Well, a couple of reasons here. One, we had some data today. We've seen the adoption of OTT and CTV accelerate thanks to the pandemic. You saw that digital video compulsive section earlier, which we want to take advantage of, particularly when it comes to RPS yes and RPS 60 folks. So yes, new for the overall population, but the folks willing to participate in the ratings are much more media active, and that bears out in our data related to OTT and CTV cross-tabbed with ratings likelies. The second is because the targeting is superior. Traditional TV, you're buying shows or channels and broad demos and hoping that the viewer on the other end is someone that actually fits your station. With CTV and OTT, instead of focusing on the where, you're focused on the who. So it doesn't matter if they're watching The Walking Dead or My Little Pony. If they fit our targeting, we can get to them. And then the bigger bonus for radio specifically would be Nielsen's marketing cloud, which we have access to in CTV and OTT buys. Nielsen uses their TV and radio user data to seed this marketing cloud, if you will, which they extrapolate out into groups that look like panelists from a data standpoint. It allows us to focus on things like heavy radio users to your format, whether it be country or classic rock or CHR, Hispanic, hip hop. There's a huge laundry list there. We can also look at heavy radio users in prime day parts, so 6A to 7P is another example, and then the list goes on from there. So like most digital products compared to their traditional counterparts, there are a lot more powerful tools at our disposal on CTV and OTT than there would be in traditional television.
Great. Our last question is, do we have any data on contesting for news talk formats?
Data on contesting for news talk. Well, we've done certainly contest type promotions with news talk stations in the past. It tends to be a vertical where the contest cash needs to be packaged as something that's entirely practical within their lives. A lot of news talks get uncomfortable with the hypey kind of contest treatment that music stations can easily handle. So you need to address a way to get that handled, but they're the same people listening at the bottom line, and particularly those that you're trying to, I hate to use the word manipulate, but the folks that we're trying to extract more time spent listening or more occasions from are receptive to the exact same tactics. That's why they're still in the Nielsen sampler, why they opted in to keep a diary in the first place. They are manipulable by cache. So the tactics work fine. It's just finding the script that makes it comfortable in the execution, that makes it possible for your station to deliver it. Anchors generally don't want to handle it, but there's certainly always a way to get it on the air.
Great. Thank you, everybody, for your questions.
Thanks very much for being here today, folks. You'll be getting a link to a recording of today's webinar in your email shortly, so you can share it around with other people on your staff who you think might benefit from it. And we're always available to answer your questions and help you with fall research and marketing plans. You see the email address there, tellmemore@nuvoodoo.com. So please contact us if we can be of assistance. For myself and PJ Kling, we thank you for being here.